Hey, how are you guys doing today? I'm Johnny from Man Behind the Lens on Instagram. In today's video, we're going to go over a few tips and tricks about landscape and astrophotography. Primarily astrophotography, which is a section of landscape photography, but we're going to go over tips, settings, and also some gear. And I hope you guys really enjoy, and I hope it helps. Thank you all for supporting what I do. So for starters, let's go over some gear. I have the Nikon Z6. It's a very good astrophotography camera as well as landscape. There's plenty of other cameras out there, but this is mirrorless. And you can also shoot on full frame, you can shoot on crop. All of it's going to work. So it's not so much about all of your gear, it's just about going out there and shooting. But of course, a little bit better gear does help you get some better images. So another thing that we're going to talk about are lenses. One of the first lenses I'm going to talk about is the Nikon 24-70 2.8. With the 2.8 aperture, it is very good in low light situations. Especially at 24-70 millimeters, it is still a good Milky Way lens. Now, most people also think that in order to shoot the Milky Way, you need to be wide open. Using 16 millimeter, 14 millimeter. But that's genuinely not always the case, especially when you want the Milky Way to be enlarged in some of your images and being able to get really good focus points on like a cactus or whatnot. It is really helpful to have a little bit more of a zoom lens. I'm also going to talk to you a little bit about the Rokinon 24-1.4. Yes, it is another 24 millimeter lens, but the 1.4 is dramatically different. You're going to be able to let in a lot more light, which means you're going to be shooting on ISOs a lot lower, so your photos are going to be a little bit less grainy and all that. So one thing I would definitely recommend is getting a low aperture lens. Places like Tokina and Rokinon, they are very budget friendly. I really do love Rokinon. I've been using this for now about a year and a half, and it is very, very sharp. It's a very good lens. I've never had any issues with it, besides the fact that it is an F-mount lens on a Z-mount camera. And unfortunately, I do have the F to Z adapter, but sometimes it doesn't always connect properly. But with that being said, they also released a 14 millimeter 2.8 Z-mount, as well as for RF mount, for those of you that have the RF mount cameras. So it is something I'm tempted to try out and something I've really been looking to get into. But at the same time, the 1.4 aperture is what keeps me using this lens. So it is something to keep in mind when you are buying camera gear. While camera gear isn't everything, it does help to have a lower aperture lens, especially to try and sharpen up your camera skills. Another thing that's really helpful is a really good strong tripod, especially something a little more heavy duty, as sometimes out in the deserts it can be very windy. So you really want something, especially in the dark, you want something that's going to be stable, something that's going to actually be able to hold up as you're walking in the dark. Sometimes you tap your camera a little bit, the tripod, and you do not want it to fall over as you're holding a lot of money up there on that tripod. So be sure to get something that's a little more stable. Spending a tad bit more money on a tripod goes a really long way. But my tripod is from Manfrotto, and they do make very good products. So that's definitely something worth checking out, and I'll make sure I leave it in the description. But yeah, that's basically a little bit about tripods. So another item I want to talk about is a shutter release cable. While a lot of people don't use these, they are very good, especially for beginners, to really sharpen up your photos. The shutter release cable basically is going to give you the opportunity to take the photo without actually touching the camera, which causes a little bit of shake. You also have a built-in intervalometer on some cameras, like my mirrorless, they have it. As well as you can also put a self-timer for 2 to 5 seconds, which will also help between shoots. But again, this is a really good lifesaver, and it's only like $8 or $9. So it's something I really recommend you getting, especially if you're getting into beginning astrophotography. So now let's talk about 5 tips to help your astrophotography. My first tip being, if you can, get out there during the daytime and actually try and find your composition during the day. And they have like Photopills and other, apps like that will help you be able to see the Milky Way ahead of time during the day, so you can set up your shoot. That way, when you go back, you kind of know roughly where it's going to be and things like that. It is definitely a very useful app, and I believe it's like $8 or $9 a month. I could be wrong. It could have went up in price, but it's definitely going to be helpful, like I said, for you to set up your compositions and things like that. So tip number 2, that would be if you have a camera that has something called focus peaking. A lot of times what that is, if you turn the focus peaking on, it's going to allow you to illuminate whether it be your stars or your subject or whichever you decide to do so. But it will allow you to illuminate it into a red color or orange color, and it will help you get your items in focus. So when you're manually focusing your lens, it will actually start to brighten up and turn another color, so that way you can see what's in focus and what's not in focus. It is a very useful and quick, helpful tool while you're actually out there at night, because it is a little hard to see and let your eyes adjust to be able to see the stars. When you're out there long enough, you will get adjusted, and it will be a little bit easier for you to maintain focus and get a good shot. Another good tip would be to make sure you're shooting at the lowest aperture on your lens, whether it be 1.4, 1.8, 2.8, 3.5, some f4 lenses. Remember, at the end of the day, you can shoot the Milky Way with whatever lens you have. Now, the lower the aperture, the more sharper you're going to be able to actually get your images and be able to pull more light out of the Milky Way itself. So just like I said, be sure that you're on your lowest aperture setting. That way you can actually pull that image and correctly get more lighting into the camera without having such a high ISO, which once again is going to cause noise. So instead of doing a lot of noise reduction in post-process, you'd be able to get rid of some of that noise ahead of time, especially in body. I really recommend you learn your camera and find out settings that are going to help you use it out in the field versus doing as much post-process work as possible. Tip number 4 would be to make sure you use manual focus. Do not use autofocus when you're out there shooting the Milky Way. It's only going to hinder you. Your autofocus systems on majority of any camera will not work in such dark territories like Joshua Tree, Anza Borrego, places out in Utah, New Mexico, Arizona. These are all very dark locations that when you get there, you can't even see in front of you. So there's no way that your camera can actually pick up enough information to be able to autofocus on anything. So make sure you're doing everything on manual focus and turn off your autofocus, as well as your VR. If your lens has VR, turn that off, as it's going to shake more, especially when you're using such a good tripod. If you use VR, whether it be vibration reduction or any of those other systems that you guys use, any of those things are going to actually corrupt your image a little bit more and cause shake if you're on a tripod. So make sure you do not use that at night. And my 5th and final tip, which this is to me one of the most serious ones, even though it may not be to others. Do not try and replicate other people's work to an extent. Be your own person. Do not compare your work ever. You will always be your own person, and by comparing your work, you're only going to start disliking your photos more. We all will improve at a certain pace, and all you got to do is just get out there and actually shoot. Reading books may help some people, but in my opinion, books don't teach you enough to even do anything. You need to be out there in a real world, shooting, making mistakes, and learning from them. Never hesitate to ask people for help though. But again, just make sure you're shooting for yourself and trying to improve your own skills. Do not try and shoot like others. You need to take these photos and images in mind, knowing that it's what you want to do. So to those of you that really do support everything that I do, I cannot thank you enough, and it really means the world to me. I will have a few images in here that you can see as well towards the end of the video. So again, thank you for supporting. Be sure to like, subscribe, and comment on here. And it's only going to go up from here. So thank you for hanging in there with me, and I appreciate it. And I hope to see you guys out there shooting sometime. Thank you very much.